Well, it wouldn't be an AMD launch without some controversy. AMD is basically establishing themselves as a meme in the tech industry because when you have a combination of blowing golden opportunities and AMD, can you name a more iconic duo? But what has garnered the enragement of PC gamers? Well, if you've been following my channel for a while now, you probably would have seen this from a mile away. Let's discuss that in this video. Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on, guys? Danny here, welcome back to the channel, and I hope you've all been doing well. So after a lot of speculation and some awkward radio silence from AMD, the Ryzen 9000 processors, well, half of them that is, based on Zen 5 have hit store shelves, and reviews went live a couple days ago. With that said, the reviews, depending on where you were watching or reading them, appear to be overall negative. The reason why I wanted to follow up with you guys on this is because last week I had made a video discussing why I believe Ryzen 9000 wasn't going to be the series gamers would be happy with or should buy. And if you've been paying attention to what has transpired over the last couple of days, basically everything I said in that video came true, and in some cases it turned out to be worse. I'll also add that with this turnout, I'm now afraid that the upcoming 9800X3D is also going to be a disappointment. More on that later. I actually did turn out to be wrong in that video as well, because I had said that the reason why AMD had delayed the chips was due to the typo of the engraving, and it's probably not due to a performance or stability bug. Well, I was wrong, because many reviewers had complained about stability problems with their 9000 series samples, from expo profiles not working, blue screens, weird boost behavior, and more.
But we saw some regression with the general ease of working with the platform for these Zen 5 CPUs, which is odd because X670E already exists. It's pretty vetted, it's relatively stable, the BIOSes are pretty built up, and it just didn't work the way we would have expected it. So very disappointing. We did get it all functioning. It is functional. It's not a total disaster, but it's a bit pickier with some things than really the Zen 5 parts plus existing motherboards should be.
Here's hoping that these problems were already caught earlier on, and when the chips are in the hands of consumers, they are stable, because at this stage, I'm sure everyone has had enough when it comes to hearing about unstable CPUs. Here's the other thing I had said in that video. They show a variety of games they tested in their labs, and on average, they found that the 9700X was only about 12% faster compared to a 5800X3D. So we're not even talking about Zen 4, we're talking about Zen 3 with the X3D chip. Now, if we look at a CPU review from Tech Power Up, we can see how they've got their 14900K 22% ahead of the 5800X3D, and their 7800X3D is about 25% faster on average. You know, I'm actually quite surprised that AMD showed modest benchmarks like these, because we actually saw some really shady and misleading marketing stuff at the same time, which were pertaining to their new 5900XT and 5800XT Zen 3 CPUs. And Hardware Unboxed actually made a pretty good video showing why exactly those benchmarks were dumb, because they had essentially created a massive GPU bottleneck and said, oh look, our CPUs are still just as competitive as Intel's 13th gen CPUs, which was very misleading, but I digress. So with all of that information taken into account, this has kind of killed the hype for the 9000 series amongst PC gamers. Now, as multitasking and workstation chips, I think there will be a lot of users pleased with the performance of the 9000 series, and with some of these leaked numbers I've seen at various power configurations, the 9000 series are looking to be quite efficient. And I think that's where they should have focused all of their marketing efforts on, and they should have straight up said that, look, gamers, we know you're excited for a new generation, but this series here really isn't for you guys. We think you guys will be astounded by what our 9800X3D has to offer, which will come later this year. If we take a look at Hardware Unboxed's review of the 9700X and 9600X, then you'll see that they posted some very disappointing results. And by the way, all the reviews I mentioned in this video, I'll have links for in the description, so I highly urge you guys to check them out for yourselves. In many cases, the new 9000 series were barely faster than the old 7000 series. In some cases, they had even lost to them. What makes matters worse though is that some reviewers showed the 9000 series even losing to the chips like the 5700X3D and 5800X3D, so we're talking about chips from about 2 years ago. Gamers Nexus in their review had an example of one such result, where in their Dragon's Dogma 2 benchmark, the 9700X, even with the faster DDR5 memory, ended up losing to both the 5700X3D and the 5800X3D, while the 7800X3D maintained chart-topping performance. AM4 bros, you guys are going to be sitting comfy for quite some time. Now again, this shouldn't come as a surprise because as pointed out in my last video, I had talked about how AMD in their own first party benchmarks had a couple of results showing the 9700X losing to the 5800X 3D. What I will add to that though is AMD should have aimed for at least 10% consistently across the board over the 7000 series. But that's just my opinion. We'll get back to this in a moment, but in some positive news, it appears as though Zen 5 does really well in certain workstation tasks, HPC, and AI benchmarks. So 4Onyx, who are known for doing benchmarks and tests using Linux, did a review of the 9700X and 9600X. In some of those benchmarks, you can see the 9000 series, despite having significantly less cores than those other CPUs at the top, still managed to either match them or outpace them. So when you look at it this way and also take into account performance per watt in these workloads, then yeah, Zen 5 is a very efficient architecture and is a significant leap over Zen 4. Gen on gen, that is what you'd want to see. It all comes down to the angle you're looking at. This was another point I covered in my previous video. AMD during their unveil should have really focused on these types of benchmarks as opposed to doing their usual gaming benchmarks and content creation benchmarks. But when you prioritize marketing and have a marketing team full of those that can't see past big bar charts apparently, then this is the result you get. It's hilarious because you had AMD trying to mislead consumers into thinking that their 5900 XT processor was on par with a 13700K, and yet Hardware Unboxed showed the 9700X losing to the 12900K on multiple occasions, and that CPU is basically a 13700K with a bit of less cache and a lower boost clock. AMD didn't just do this for gaming, but from one of their internal sales guides, or I think this was part of their reviewer's guide, they showed the 9700X was about 42% faster than the 14700K in Handbrake. How they managed to achieve this result without some kind of weird fuckery is beyond me, because in both Guru 3D's review and Forbes' review, the Ryzen 7 9700X, they show the CPU is getting destroyed by the 14700K. Since I don't have access to the whole slide deck, I can't really see what's written on the footnotes, but I'd love to know, because if both systems are configured sensibly, then you get results like what those reviewers showed. I mean, I've known for a long time that anything that comes from AMD's marketing team, you should just throw straight into the trash. But in all honesty, why do they indulge in such shady marketing? I mean, all companies do it, but the point is they don't have to when there are so many other areas where the product legitimately does so good in, so why not showcase those? Circling back to the gaming benchmarks and efficiency, there were a number of folks who basically looked like they were coping hard or grasping at straws when you talk about gaming efficiency, because while compared to the 7700X, the 9700X looks better when it comes to performance per watt. There is an improvement there, but that improvement is diminished when you compare it to the Ryzen 7 7700, which is a 65 watt Zen 4 part. So you could essentially run eco mode on the 7700X, barely lose performance, and then that performance per watt efficiency is gone. And this is one of the reasons why I tell people that I don't really pay too much heed into out-of-box numbers, because when you can tune processors in such ways, whether that'd be overclocking or undervolting, there are so many different ways you can, skew the performance per watt numbers. Adding on to that, PBO, or Precision Boost Overdrive, apparently doesn't seem to be doing anything tangible for the processors either. You can see in Tech Power Up's review of the 9700X, they enabled PBO and it barely did anything for them. Hardware Unboxed in his 9600X review added that slide, and again, he showed the same thing. So for multi-threading performance, yes, perhaps the chips are power starved, but in terms of gaming, it really makes no difference at all. The architecture there is just a flop. I'm just going to say it straight up. AMD should have rebranded these CPUs and marked them down $100 cheaper, because at their current prices, both the 9700X and 9600X are DOA. They just don't make sense when there are much better options out there, whether you're going to be doing gaming or using the build for productivity. As both of these CPUs lose to something like a 13600K in multi-thread, they lose to it in gaming, and you can even run the 13600K in eco mode, barely lose performance, and achieve the same level of efficiency. And while 4Onyx showed the other side of the coin with those AI benchmarks, I'm not really sure people delving into those types of applications are even going to be buying these parts anyways. They'll be buying the higher end chips like the 9950X or 9900X. So AMD's missed the mark on both segments there. And I gotta agree with Steve, Hardware Unboxed Steve that is, that we shouldn't really get fixated on the core count as long as the performance is there, but unfortunately it just isn't. Hence a lot of people are saying these high CPUs aren't warranted. But as we've discussed AMD a lot over the years, it seems as though their current strategy is to launch at unrealistic prices, get shitty reviews, clear out stock of last gen stuff, and then drop the price of the new generation stuff to where it should have launched at originally. One of the other things I wanted to come back to was how I'm not really feeling optimistic about the 9800 X3D. Since Zen 5's gaming performance is basically Zen 4 give or take, then adding 3D V-Cache is just going to create another 7800 X3D, aka the 9800 X3D. I could be wrong though, unless something about the new cache is different or its effects on Zen 5's architecture are more profound. I just don't really see the reason to get hyped for a 9800 X3D. When considering these results, it's not going to be a whole deal faster than a 7800 X3D. I'm at best predicting 5 to 7%. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Given what Zen 5 was able to achieve in terms of gaming performance, it's quite clear that this architecture was built to accelerate everyone's favorite buzzword these days, and that's AI. No surprises here though, given AMD's behavior, as well as the rest of the semiconductor industry, players like Nvidia and Intel. They're all pretty much doing the same thing. The general consumer no longer matters. What they're after are those who will gladly pay them 5, 6, 7 figures to accelerate their machine learning, and as a business, that's what matters to them the most. So yeah, that's Zen 5 in a nutshell so far. We still have to see benchmarks for the 9950X and 9900X, but honestly, given what I've seen so far, I'm not really interested anymore. They might do a bit better in terms of gaming, and obviously in multi-threading, they'll be up there in the charts, but what good will that do if they're not significantly faster than the previous gen and cost significantly more than the current market prices of alternatives? But we'll leave it there for now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.